The alien ship hovered silently above Earth, its sleek metallic surface reflecting the soft blue glow of the atmosphere. The crew, made up of beings from a distant star system, had never seen a planet like this before. They had been traveling for years, studying distant galaxies, but Earth was different. Its green forests, its vast oceans, and its strange creatures had caught their attention. This was to be their first real exploration of the planet, and they were filled with both excitement and nervousness. The captain of the ship, a tall alien with pale blue skin and sharp, glowing eyes, looked out over the planet below. "Prepare to land," he commanded, his voice steady but full of curiosity. The alien crew quickly moved to their stations, monitoring the ship's descent. They had no idea what to expect from this primitive planet, but they were eager to discover more. As the ship touched down softly in a dense forest, the crew of aliens exited, their protective suits glimmering in the sunlight. The trees around them were tall and thick, the air filled with the scent of fresh earth. The crew moved cautiously, scanning their surroundings for any signs of life. They had been briefed about Earth's ecosystems, but they had no real understanding of what lay ahead. The captain led the team through the forest, his sharp eyes scanning for movement. He gestured for the others to follow, his curiosity growing with each step. The sound of birds chirping echoed through the trees, but everything seemed calm. The alien scanners detected no immediate danger. It seemed like a peaceful place, a planet with simple life forms, far from the advanced technology the crew was accustomed to. But something felt off. Suddenly, there was a low growl. The sound was so deep and guttural that it made the hair on the back of the alien's neck stand up. The crew froze, their eyes wide, their bodies tense. The captain motioned for everyone to be quiet, but his own heart was racing. The growl came again, this time closer. The sound echoed through the trees, sending a chill down the aliens' spines. They had never heard anything like it before. It was a warning, but from what? The captain signaled for his crew to form a protective circle, their weapons ready. Whatever was out there was not something they were prepared to deal with. The alien sensors scanned the area, but they found nothing. Nothing but trees and shrubs. But the growl grew louder, and then they saw it. A massive shape stepped into view, its eyes glowing a deep, fierce amber. It was a creature unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. A giant dog, its body rippling with muscles, its teeth sharp and gleaming in the sunlight. It stood in the clearing, staring directly at the aliens. Its growl deepened, and it took a slow step forward. The aliens' hands tightened around their weapons, unsure of what to do. They had expected animals, but nothing like this. The creature was far larger than any of the animals they had studied in the past. Its muscles were defined, its eyes full of intelligence, and most of all, its stance was one of pure, unrelenting aggression. The captain, still not fully understanding what was happening, stepped forward cautiously. "What is this creature?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. The others looked to him for guidance, but they were equally confused and frightened. They had never encountered anything like this on any of the other planets they had visited. Then, from the shadows, a human figure emerged. A man, dressed in simple clothes, holding a leash in his hand. The dog's growl faded slightly, but its eyes never left the alien crew. The man walked forward, pulling the dog along with him. The creature's massive body moved with ease, its eyes always on the aliens, watching their every movement. "Calm down, Max," the human said softly, his voice steady and reassuring. The dog, Max, paused, his growl turning into a low whine as he looked at the human. The man continued to move forward, not showing the slightest sign of fear. The aliens, still unsure of what was happening, watched in stunned silence. The human came to a stop in front of the captain, the dog sitting obediently by his side. The man looked up at the aliens, a small smile on his face. "Is there a problem?" he asked, as if the situation was completely normal. The captain, still not fully comprehending the situation, spoke cautiously. "What is this creature? Is it a pet?" The human's smile widened. "Pet?" he repeated. "That's right. Max here is my pet. My best friend, actually." The aliens exchanged confused glances. "A pet," the captain repeated. "But this creature," he couldn't find the words to describe it. It was huge, powerful, and its presence was overwhelming. The idea of it being a pet, something kept for companionship, was unfathomable to the aliens. "Yes," the human said with a nod. "Max is a pet. He's very loyal, very protective. He's a companion, not a wild animal. But believe me, he can take care of himself." The aliens were still in shock. They had never encountered anything like this. In their home systems, they had pets, of course, but nothing like this. Nothing that could strike fear into their hearts just by standing there. Max was a force of nature, a creature that could rip through their technology if it chose to. The captain, still unsure of how to respond, took a step back. He signaled for his crew to lower their weapons, though they were clearly still on edge. "This is unexpected," he said slowly. "We didn't know that humans kept such dangerous creatures as pets." The human smiled again, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Dangerous? No, Max is just protective. But he's loyal, and he'd never hurt anyone unless I told him to. He's just doing his job." The captain's mind raced. What kind of species kept such powerful creatures as pets? What else did humans have that the aliens didn't know about? They had underestimated Earth, that much was clear, but there was still so much to learn. And now, with Max the dog standing before them, it was clear that they had barely scratched the surface. The human noticed the uncertainty in the alien's eyes and chuckled. "You're probably wondering why he's so big and strong. Well, humans have been raising and training dogs like Max for centuries. They've evolved alongside us, becoming more than just animals. They're part of our lives, part of our families." The captain, still trying to absorb the information, turned his attention back to the massive dog. "And this, Max, is it? This is normal for your species?" The human nodded. "Totally normal. In fact, Max here is one of the more common breeds, though I'll admit he's a bit of a giant. But dogs like him have been with us for thousands of years. They protect us, help us, and yes, sometimes they fight with us. They're not just pets, they're partners." The aliens, still processing the information, began to wonder what other surprises Earth might have in store. If this was just one pet, what did that mean for the rest of humanity's animals? They had only just begun to understand Earth, and already they realized that this world was full of mysteries far beyond what they had expected. As the human stood there with Max at his side, the aliens felt a mix of awe and unease. They had come to study Earth's creatures, but it seemed they had stumbled upon something much bigger and far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And this was just the beginning. The alien crew stood frozen in place, their wide eyes fixed on the massive dog, Max. It was impossible to understand. The creature was so much more than anything they had expected to find on Earth. It was unlike the harmless animals they had studied from afar. This thing could kill with one swipe of its claws. The thought of it being a pet was almost laughable, yet the human beside it didn't seem afraid. In fact, he was smiling, as if everything was perfectly normal. The captain of the alien crew took a slow step back, his heart racing in confusion. He glanced at his crew, but no one spoke. They were all too stunned to process what was happening. The human, who seemed completely at ease, watched them closely, as if he expected them to ask questions. After what felt like an eternity, the captain finally spoke. "This is a pet?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He still couldn't fully grasp the idea. To his knowledge, no species in the universe kept such dangerous creatures as pets. The humans, it seemed, had mastered something the aliens hadn't even considered. The human nodded. "Yes," he said simply, "Max is a pet. He's loyal, strong, and protective. He's been with me for years. Loyal? The captain repeated, his mind struggling to catch up. You allow it to roam freely, without fear. The human laughed lightly, as though the question was ridiculous. Of course. Max would never hurt me. He's not a wild animal. He's a part of my family. He's trained to protect, not to attack unless I tell him to. He trusts me, and I trust him. He gently patted Max's large head, and the dog wagged its tail, looking up at its owner with unwavering loyalty. The captain glanced at his crew again. They were still on edge, their hands gripping their weapons tightly. It was clear they didn't understand. The dog was not only large and strong, but it also had an intelligence that seemed to match that of any sentient being. The aliens had never encountered a creature like this before, and they were beginning to question everything they thought they knew about Earth. What other creatures do you have? One of the aliens asked, his voice tinged with awe and fear. Are they all like this? The human shook his head. Not all of them, but some of the bigger dogs are similar. They're trained for different purposes. Some are hunters, some are guard animals, and some help with work. But they're all very intelligent, and they're all loyal to their human companions. The aliens exchanged uneasy looks. They had come to Earth expecting to find primitive, weak creatures, something they could study and observe. But instead, they were facing a planet full of animals that were stronger, faster, and more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. They were beginning to realize that humans were not only different from them, they were far more advanced in ways they had never imagined. The captain took a deep breath and tried to steady himself. He knew they had to continue their mission, but now everything felt uncertain. And these? Pets, they're not a threat to us, he asked, trying to sound calm. The human smiled again. Not unless you give them a reason to be. Max here will protect me, and anyone else I care about. But he's not a threat unless he needs to be, and even then, he'll only attack on my command. He's well trained, but make no mistake, if anyone tried to hurt me, he'd tear them apart. The captain couldn't help but shudder at the thought. He looked at the massive dog again. It seemed so calm, so docile next to its owner, but the memory of its fierce growl and the way it had locked eyes with him and his crew sent chills down his spine. The idea that this creature could become a weapon at a moment's notice was terrifying. Do all humans have creatures like this? Another alien asked, his voice more curious than fearful. Do you all have such powerful pets? The human paused for a moment, considering the question. Not all humans, but a lot of people do. And even the ones who don't have dogs like Max still have pets, cats, birds, rabbits, you name it. Humans have had a long history of keeping animals, some for companionship, some for work, and some for protection. Max here is just one example. The aliens were silent, their minds racing. This was beyond their understanding. The idea that humans kept such dangerous animals as pets, trained them, and lived with them peacefully was something the aliens had never even considered. It was clear now that humans were not just another species. They were something else entirely. The captain, still grappling with the shock of it all, motioned for his crew to follow him. Let's move deeper into the forest, he said. We need to gather more data. We can't ignore what we've seen here. The human nodded, giving Max one last affectionate pat before he started walking. The dog stayed by his side, its eyes never leaving the aliens. The aliens, still on edge, followed closely behind, unsure of what they might encounter next. As they walked, the captain's mind wandered. He had come to Earth expecting to learn about its creatures, but he had never imagined this. They had only scratched the surface. If humans could tame animals like Max, what else could they do? What other surprises did Earth have in store for them? And more importantly, how much danger were the aliens in if they underestimated humanity? The crew continued their trek through the dense forest, the air thick with the scent of moss and leaves. The aliens moved carefully, their eyes scanning the environment for any signs of danger. But this time, their eyes weren't on the trees or the ground. They were focused on the human and his massive dog, Max, who walked beside him without a care in the world. The dog's powerful muscles rippled as it moved, its eyes always alert, always watching. The aliens couldn't shake the feeling that they were being observed by something far more intelligent than they had originally thought. As they walked, the human spoke about the history of humanity's relationship with animals. Humans have been living with animals for thousands of years, he said. It's not just about companionship. We've always had a bond with them, something deeper than most people understand. It's a connection that goes beyond just keeping them as pets. These animals help us in ways you can't imagine. The captain listened closely, his mind racing. He had never encountered a species that had such a close relationship with its animals. The aliens had always kept their distance from their pets, if they had any. The idea of domesticated animals fighting beside their owners, working with them, protecting them. It was strange, almost unbelievable. Max here, the human continued, patting the dog's large head, wasn't always this big. I raised him from a pup. Over time, he became stronger, smarter, and more protective. I trained him to help with different tasks. He's a hunter, a guard dog, and even helps with search and rescue. And he's not alone. There are thousands of dogs like him, all over the world, helping people in ways you wouldn't believe. The captain glanced at the dog again. He had always thought of Earth's animals as simple creatures, easy to understand. But now, it seemed the humans had something far more powerful than they realized. This dog wasn't just an animal, it was a weapon. And not just Max. The aliens began to wonder if the entire planet was full of creatures like this, trained and used by humans for protection, for battle, and even for war. One of the aliens, a young member of the crew, asked with curiosity, "You say Max is a guard dog, but can he really fight? Could he take down other aliens like us?" The human looked at the dog, his eyes filled with pride. "Max could take down anyone who tried to hurt me or anyone else he cares about. He's been trained to fight, to protect. But he's not just muscle. He's smart, too. He can outthink most people in a fight." The captain felt a chill run down his spine. The idea that a creature, a pet, could be so powerful and intelligent was more than just shocking. It was terrifying. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to study the creatures, to observe them, and catalog them. But now, they were realizing that they might be the ones being observed. "What other animals do humans train like this?" one of the aliens asked, his voice now filled with caution. The human shrugged. "It's not just dogs. We have other animals that humans train to work alongside us. Some train horses, some have trained birds, and there are even stories of humans working with wild animals, like tigers or bears. But dogs are the most common. They've been by our side for thousands of years." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. They had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive world full of weak creatures. But now, they were discovering that Earth's animals weren't just prey. They were warriors, soldiers, and guardians. The thought that these creatures could be used against them was enough to make them nervous. As the crew continued walking through the forest, the ground suddenly shook. It wasn't a violent tremor, but enough to make everyone stop in their tracks. The humans remained calm, but the alien sensors immediately went into alert mode. Something was coming. Max growled lowly, his body tense, as he stood in front of his owner. The human didn't move, though. He just patted the dog's side and whispered, "Stay calm, boy. We've got this." The captain's eyes darted around. He couldn't sense anything. No movement, no heat signatures, yet the dog was reacting as if it had sensed something dangerous. The crew stood ready, their weapons raised, but they were unsure what they were facing. And then they saw it. From behind the trees, another dog appeared. This one was even bigger than Max, its fur dark and wild, its eyes glowing with an intense, wild energy. It was a beast, untamed, ferocious, and it had no leash, no human guiding it. It was as if it had come straight from the wild. The human stood still, his hand still on Max's back, as if waiting for something to happen. The beast-sized dog stepped forward. Its eyes locked onto Max. The two dogs stared at each other, neither moving, neither growling. It was a tense standoff, one that the aliens could feel in their bones. The captain's heart raced. "What is this?" he asked, his voice shaky. The human smiled calmly. "This is a wild dog. It's not one of my pets, but I've seen them before. Some dogs are trained by humans, others are born wild and live in the forests. This one is probably looking for food." Max took a step forward, his body low to the ground. The wild dog did the same. It was clear that the two animals were sizing each other up, waiting for the other to make the first move. The tension in the air was thick, and the alien crew was holding their breath. For a moment, the two dogs just stared at each other. Then, without warning, the wild dog lunged. Max immediately reacted, his speed and strength surprising the aliens as he leaped forward, meeting the wild dog head-on. There was a blur of fur, a snarl, and then the sound of teeth clashing. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the two dogs fought fiercely. Max's training was clear. He was fast, precise, and controlled. The wild dog was strong and wild, but it was no match for Max's skill. With a swift move, Max pinned the wild dog to the ground, holding it there with his massive paws. The human stepped forward, his voice calm. "Good boy, Max. Let him go." Max immediately released the wild dog, stepping back and sitting beside his owner. The wild dog, defeated, scrambled to its feet and took off into the forest, disappearing into the trees. The captain and his crew were silent, still processing what they had just witnessed. The power, the skill, the speed, everything about what they had seen had shattered their understanding of Earth's creatures. These animals weren't just pets. They were fighters, and humanity had trained them to be this way. The human looked at the captain, a knowing smile on his face. "See, Max is more than just a pet. He's part of the team, and we train them well." The captain swallowed hard. "What else is there?" he asked, his voice hoarse. The human just grinned. "You've only seen a small part of what Earth's creatures can do. But trust me, there's a lot more." The alien crew continued to walk in silence, their minds swirling with everything they had witnessed. The battle between Max and the wild dog had left them stunned, unsure of what to think. These creatures, which they had once assumed to be weak and primitive, were anything but. Max, the so-called pet, had displayed strength, skill, and intelligence far beyond anything the aliens had expected. And the wild dog, though wild, had shown the same raw power and aggression. The captain's mind raced. They had come to Earth expecting to study its creatures, to learn about its ecosystems and wildlife. But what they had discovered so far was far more complicated. Humans had tamed some of the most dangerous animals in the galaxy. They had trained them to fight, to protect, and to work alongside them. The implications of this were enormous. "What's next?" one of the aliens asked, breaking the silence. "What more are we going to see? What else can these creatures do?" The captain glanced around, his eyes narrowed in thought. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But I fear we've only scratched the surface. The humans have a deep connection with these animals, and if we underestimate them..." The rest of the crew nodded grimly, their eyes scanning the forest. The air felt heavy now, filled with the weight of what they had learned. There was no telling what else the humans had tamed, or how they had done it. The human, walking ahead of them with Max at his side, seemed completely at ease. He wasn't worried, not even a little. The dog, calm once more, walked beside him, its head held high, its eyes occasionally glancing back at the aliens. It was as if nothing had happened, as if the intense battle had been nothing more than a minor disturbance. The captain decided to speak with the human again. "You said that these creatures, these pets, are not only loyal, but also strong, intelligent, and skilled. How did you come to have such control over them? What makes them obey you so willingly? The human turned, a thoughtful look crossing his face. It's not just about control, he said, his voice calm but filled with pride. It's about trust. We've raised these animals alongside us for thousands of years. We train them, yes, but more importantly, we bond with them. They trust us, and we trust them. It's a relationship that goes both ways. The captain was still trying to process everything. So you're saying these animals choose to work with you? They choose to fight, to protect. The human nodded. That's right. It's not forced. They have the freedom to choose. But when they trust their human companions, they fight by their side without hesitation. They want to protect us, just as much as we want to protect them. The captain paused, absorbing the idea. He had never considered this before. The concept of an animal, a creature, having the ability to choose loyalty and action. This was something entirely new. It made the alien crew feel both small and uncertain. The power of humanity's bond with their pets could change everything. Just as the captain was about to respond, a loud rustling noise came from the trees ahead. It wasn't the sound of a breeze or a falling branch. No, this was something far more intense, something that sent a chill through the entire crew. The noise was coming closer, quickly. Max's ears perked up, and the dog let out a low growl, his body tense. The human didn't flinch. He simply looked ahead, as though he had been expecting this. "Stay close," he said quietly to the captain. "Max, stay alert." The crew instinctively gathered together, their weapons raised, though their hands trembled. The human was calm, too calm, and the dog was focused, its eyes narrowing as it tracked the movement in the trees. The captain looked at the human, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is it? What's coming?" The human's face was serious now, his eyes sharp. "We're in the forest. There are many creatures here. Some of them are dangerous." The trees ahead shook violently, and suddenly, a massive shape burst from the foliage. It was a huge four-legged creature, its fur thick and matted with dirt. Its eyes glowed yellow, and its teeth were sharp, gleaming in the dim light. It was a predator, clearly, and it was charging toward them with terrifying speed. Max immediately moved into position, placing himself between the creature and the human. The wild dog that had been with them earlier had been large, but this one was a giant, towering over Max by several feet. The creature's roar echoed through the forest as it charged. The human remained still, his eyes locked onto the charging beast. "Max, no hesitation," he ordered firmly. Max barked loudly, a sound that echoed through the trees. Then, without waiting, the massive dog launched himself at the creature. The two animals collided with a deafening crash, their teeth snapping and claws digging into the earth. The forest seemed to shake with the force of their struggle. The aliens, watching in stunned silence, could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The fight was brutal, the two creatures moving with incredible speed and power. Max was smaller than the wild beast, but his speed and precision were unmatched. He dodged the creature's strikes, biting and slashing at its legs. The captain and his crew had never seen anything like this before. The alien species had fought many battles, both among themselves and with other creatures in the universe. But the way these animals fought, this was something new. It wasn't just instinct. It wasn't just brute strength. There was strategy, there was planning, and there was teamwork. The trust between the human and the dog was clear in every move. After what felt like an eternity, Max managed to get behind the creature, sinking his teeth into its thick neck. The wild beast roared in pain, trying to shake him off, but Max held tight. With one final, powerful twist, the wild creature collapsed to the ground, its body still. Max stepped back, his chest heaving, his eyes fixed on the defeated beast. The human walked forward slowly, his voice gentle. "Good job, Max. You did it." The captain and his crew were silent, staring in awe at the scene. They had seen many alien species, many powerful creatures, but none of them had ever fought like this. Max wasn't just a pet. He was a warrior, a soldier, and he fought not only for his human companion, but for the bond they shared. "Do you understand now?" the human asked, turning to the captain. "This is what humanity has with its animals. It's not just about control. It's about trust, loyalty, and partnership." The captain swallowed hard, his mind spinning. He had come to Earth to study its creatures, to understand them. But now, he realized he was only beginning to comprehend the true power of humanity's bond with their animals, and he wasn't sure if they were ready to face it. The captain stood frozen, his eyes locked on Max as the giant dog stood over the fallen beast, its chest rising and falling with each heavy breath. The air was thick with the scent of blood and the sounds of the forest around them. The alien crew, still shaken by the intensity of the fight, had barely moved, their weapons lowered in disbelief. They had never imagined such a display of power and teamwork, let alone from a pet. The human, looking proud but calm, stepped toward the beast's body. Max followed closely, his eyes never leaving the creature, his movements slow and calculated. The human bent down, running his hand through the fur of the fallen animal, then stood back up. "This is part of the natural order," he said simply. "In the wild, only the strongest survive." The captain took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. "You've proven that these creatures are more than what we expected. But how? How did you train them to fight like this?" The human glanced at the captain, his eyes calm but filled with a hint of amusement. "It's not just about training. It's about the connection. You can't force a creature to fight for you. They have to trust you. They have to understand why they're fighting. Only then can they give their all." He looked down at Max, who sat proudly beside him, his tail wagging slightly. "Max here was raised from a pup, and over the years, we formed a bond. It's not just about strength. It's about mutual respect." The captain nodded slowly, still trying to process everything he had seen. The bond between human and animal, something that transcended mere control or dominance, was foreign to him. He had seen species use animals for war, but this was different. These creatures weren't just trained to follow commands. They fought because they wanted to, because they had a purpose. They fought because they were loyal, not because they were forced. "We've seen the strength of your pets," the captain said quietly, his eyes moving from Max to the fallen beast. "But what else do humans have? Is this unique to Earth, or are there more creatures like this?" The human paused, his gaze distant for a moment. "There are many creatures on Earth, some more dangerous than others. But what makes us different is how we've learned to live with them, to adapt with them, and for them. You see, humans aren't just the dominant species because we're the strongest. We've made the animals around us part of our lives, part of our survival. Some of them are companions, some are protectors, some help us hunt or work, and some are warriors." He gave Max a soft pat. "But it's always been a partnership." The captain's mind was reeling. He had come to Earth with one goal in mind: to observe, to study, to understand. But now, the mission seemed almost irrelevant. Earth wasn't just another planet filled with primitive creatures. It was a world where humans had cultivated a partnership with the animals, making them allies in a way the aliens had never seen before. They had created an entire culture around this bond, and it was clear that this partnership was a key part of humanity's success. Suddenly, there was a rustling in the distance. Max's ears perked up again, his body stiffening. The crew tensed, their hands quickly returning to their weapons. But the human remained calm, giving the captain a reassuring glance. "It's just another animal," the human said. "We're in their territory now. If we don't bother them, they won't bother us." The captain wasn't sure he believed it, but he couldn't argue. The dog's reaction had been swift and precise, as though it could sense danger long before the aliens ever could. The aliens had encountered thousands of species throughout the galaxy, but none of them had ever worked in such harmony with another species. especially not in the way humans had done with their animals. Max lowered his head slightly, his eyes scanning the surrounding forest. The moment passed, and soon enough, the creature, whatever it had been, moved off into the distance. The forest returned to its eerie stillness. The captain turned back to the human, his voice solemn. "Your planet is unlike any we've encountered before. You've shown us a side of Earth we never could have imagined." The human shrugged. "Earth is full of surprises, but I'm not the only one who has trained animals like Max. There are others, all over the world. People use their animals for all kinds of tasks: hunting, protection, farming, rescue missions. But we've learned something important along the way. You can't control nature, but you can work with it." The captain's eyes narrowed in thought. "And you would let your pets fight for you?" The human's expression hardened just for a moment. "Max and the others don't fight because they have to. They fight because they choose to protect what matters. And when you form a bond like that, you realize that they're not just animals. They're family." The captain's mind whirled with new understanding. Earth wasn't just a planet filled with animals and plants. It was a world where humans and animals shared a deep, trusting relationship that allowed them to achieve things that no other species in the galaxy had ever thought possible. The aliens had underestimated humanity. They had expected to find a species that relied on technology or weapons, but instead they had found a species that had mastered the art of collaboration, not just with other humans, but with the very creatures that shared their world. "Perhaps we've made a mistake," the captain said softly. "Perhaps we have much more to learn from you than we realized." The human gave him a knowing smile. "I think that's what we all do. We learn from each other." The crew began to walk back, slowly, as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Max walked proudly beside his owner, his massive form casting a long shadow on the ground. The aliens, still in awe, couldn't help but feel a mix of respect and fear. They had come to Earth to study its creatures, but in doing so, they had learned far more than they had ever anticipated. They had learned that on Earth, the strongest weapon wasn't technology or firepower. It was the bond between humans and the creatures they call family. As the aliens prepared to leave, the captain turned to the human one last time. "Your world is unlike any other." The human nodded. "Welcome to Earth."